All right, everybody, let's smash this place up on a Monday night. We're here on Warchant TV on the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhees. He's managing editor of Warchant.com, Irish Norvell. My name is Tom Lang, and we can all celebrate one thing, everybody. Ira, you can, I can. That purgatory place that we lived, that limbo, it's over, man. We made it. We made it. That was will they, won't they? We'll obviously talk about what they did and what they didn't do. But thank God that's over, man. I like this better than that, even though I have feelings.
Yeah, no, I think it's that's one of my biggest takeaways, not takeaways, but my initial reaction. I was talking to somebody over at FSU yesterday, and they were asking kind of where I stood on it, and I was like, well, for starters, I'm just glad that we know what's going to happen, because really the last 6 weeks, I feel I hate covering a football team that's in a situation like that, because there's things that would be good to write about or talk about, or, that we could do features on and things like that. But the overriding topic becomes what's going to happen with the head coach. And so, for example, I mean, there's some interesting stories on this team. There's some guys that have had really good years. There's, just think about Deuce Robinson. We're going to sit down with him tomorrow. He's going to be made available to the media. We've interviewed him some this year, but it would have been nice to go just do a sit down interview with him and do like a nice feature on him. But it's just, with everything going on, it's just that drowned the topic of Mike Norvell's future, what they're going to do, was just constantly hovering over everything. Now there's plenty of fans who, like you said, won't be thrilled with the decision. And, that may affect whether or not they want to read or consume as much content as maybe they normally would. But I think there's a lot of people who would like to get back to just, talking about football and looking at the team and what it might be next year. And then as we get into that conversation in the off season, but the purgatory may end for the fans and media. To some degree, it's kind of just beginning for some of the people over there in the athletics department, because now they have to figure out what's going to happen, who's making all these decisions, who's coming, who's staying, who's leaving. And that part of it now is I think where the focus will be over there.
And that's where just having a few extra hours can put you in a headspace. I'm speaking for myself of, all right, you're really going to do this. We not happy about it, but this is the path that we're walking. So what now? And where does Florida State go in terms of personnel? Who makes those calls? And what is Mike Norvell's role for 2026? Like, what is he in charge of? That's a pertinent question. It's a really basic one, but I think that's something that we're going to have to unfurl here in the weeks to come. Didn't sound like they had all those things lined up at the press conference this morning, Ira. You asked them the question, and it seems like they're focused on the Florida game for now, and they'll have that conversation afterwards. They don't have a concrete idea or game plan that they wish to share, at least at this point. Even though they had some meetings this weekend, they're not quite there yet.
Well, at least that they're willing to share. I do believe they're probably on the same page in terms of, Mike, we got to fix some thhave You're right. We got to fix some things. And maybe they even touched on some big picture topics. And again, this is not uncommon. I think I might have mentioned it last week on the Smash that, I know for a fact, because President Thrasher, may he rest in peace, told me after the fact that, he had sat down with Jimbo Fisher during that 2017 season and said, you've got to make changes on your coaching staff. This is untenable. We have to have changes on your coaching staff. And that Jimbo actually gave him a list of coaches that he planned to make changes with at the end of that season. And that was during that whole year. And now, President Thrasher expressed that he wondered if Jimbo would have gone through with it. Like, he was prepared for that fight to continue after the season. And so, this isn't the first time a coach has gone down this road. But yeah, in terms of specifics, Mike Norvell certainly wasn't sharing any. As far as I can tell, people in the football program don't have any specifics that they know of. Now, whether or not Mike Norvell and Michael Alford and, President McCullough and Peter Collins have actually gotten into any of the nitty gritty, I don't know the answer to that.
Do you think it's fair to say, and we'll link to your column that ran this morning and is available now at warchant.com for a nice top to bottom look at what's going on at Florida State and why the decision came to a head yesterday and what the administration is thinking. Do you think that Peter Collins' statement yesterday, Ira, guarantees that they're going to drop somebody into the equation like a general manager? Because it feels like it's more than just scouting department stuff or high school relations stuff. Like, it seems like he wanted it to be out there without explicitly saying what the title of the position is going to be, that there's going to be some czar-ish position of football that's coming into the equation.
Somebody I talked to during the process told me use the specific word GM. That's why I wrote it. And now I don't know exactly where that fits on the pecking order. I don't know if that person is the person that Mike Norvell reports to, like in the NFL or Major League Baseball, or if it's more of you run the scouting department and personnel and all of that, and the head football coach runs everything else. Like, I don't know the answer to that, because, and I think a good thing to discuss right now would probably be, the current general manager position. They have two positions right now that are kind of quasi of those roles, right? Bruce Warwick is, I believe, chief of staff. I think that's his official title. And he's kind of like Mike Norvell's right-hand man. He handles everybody else, kind of reports through him in the football department that's not specifically like on the field. I believe he oversees like the athletic training staff and all the other ancillary areas come up through him. He also handles a lot of decisions that maybe somebody can't get in front of Mike Norvell because he's the head coach and he's busy. They go to Bruce Warwick, and then that may go that direction. But even though he has NFL experience, he's always been kind of more of an operations guy than a front office, signing players type of guy. Then you have Derek Ray, who a lot of people see his name out on message boards and podcasts, and he's a frequent receiver of arrows because of what happened last year with Florida State's transfer portal, just disaster. Which I don't think a lot of that's fair, honestly. I think he's kind of been targeted as that it's his fault. That they signed a lot of guys that were not very good. My impression, I could be wrong, but I feel pretty strongly about it, is that the head coach signs off on all these players. I mean, that's what they do. There's no head coach that's not maybe Coach Bowden late in his tenure, maybe Joe Pa late in his tenure, coaches kind of in retirement years maybe let their staff make all those decisions. But almost every head coach, Jimbo Fisher used to say it all the time, I'm the player personnel director. Mike Norvell signs off on these guys that they sign. So, if Derek Ray's not good at his job and not in terms of identifying talent, coordinating the process, the scouting department and all that, at the end of the day, Mike Norvell's the one that signs off on whoever they offer and sign and how hard they push on guys. I mean, that goes back to the head coach. So that's why I push back when people go after him. I'm not telling you Derek Ray's great at his job. I don't know. I'm not in there. I have no idea. But to point it all at him, to me, is unfair. But his role is the general manager for the personnel. Is he oversees the recruiting department, the scouting department. His people schedule all the visits. They do all the planning when Norvell's going on the road or the coaches are going on the road. It's kind of a coordination, the person that kind of coordinates all those efforts. I think it's more of that than it is. And then it's also involved in the NIL, some of the NIL decisions. But in terms of like, he's the guy that decides you're going to get DJ Uyunglele over Cam Ward, which is one of the things that people would say. That's not accurate as far as I know.
Then the question at that point becomes, all right, so if you need somebody else to step in and guide those decisions, am I already assuming too much when I start with that point, or do you think that Mike Norvell is going to be allowed to name who that person would be? Because it would seem that no matter how you want to pin it, be it on Ray or be it on Mike, it all stops with Mike no matter what, right? Like it is
currently for sure. The question is, how far do you want to go with that model? Like, how far do you want to go with like an NFL model? Because again, we all know it. We see it all the time in pro football where, the general manager a lot of times is the one that handles the scouting department, runs the draft, makes the choices, and the head coach kind of has to live with it and has to figure it out. And different head coaches have more input. Some head coaches get to do both. So I don't know if it's going to be a combination of that. It's going to be a symbiotic relationship. I don't know if they've already got somebody in mind that maybe Norvell has a relationship with, or if it's going to be somebody from the totally outside. I mean, I think it's a blank canvas to start with. I don't know how far down the road they are in terms of how it's going to work. I think you could go about it a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah, I would. There's one way that's sticking out of my brain, which is you hire that general manager figure, and then that is the person who makes all subsequent decisions. But if it's not that way, then that raises all those questions that you put towards the latter part of your column, which is, hey, it's all wonderful if this is the path that you want to walk if you're the administration and you want to do it in the name of fiscal responsibility. But just saying that doesn't make this transition period smooth at all. Like, there are so many material steps that you're going to have to take, and probably some communications that you're going to have to make as well. I would imagine that either it being the athletic director or Chair Collins, I don't know that this is McCullough's arena, but they're probably going to want to communicate what that plan is going to be, I would imagine, after the Florida game. If they don't have a hire ready to go, they're going to have to explain what the chain of command is. And I got to wonder also on the calendar, Ira, is that something that you do right after the Florida game, or do you wait until the signing period is closed? Because you raised a point earlier today on the Jeff Cameron show, which is, hey, what if you bring in some people who are in charge of scouting and they're inheriting a bunch of players that have been recruited, but they would say no to in the next cycle in 2027. So there's a lot of potential soupiness coming up here. I wonder if anybody is going to take the lead in that regard in communicating how they want to go about making these substantial changes that they spoke to in the statement yesterday.
Yeah, I think the timeliness of it is somewhat important for the fan base. I don't think it's super urgent to get that staff in place right now in terms of what you can tangibly do for this roster, because the signing period is next week.
Yeah, it's probably this is portal aimed more than high school aimed, right? Yeah,
exactly. And so, I mean, is it possible that staff, that scouting, any new scouting people or a general manager, those types of people come in and evaluate the roster and say, well, this is not good enough, and these are things we've got to do, and I mean, I don't know what the short-term answer to that would be, except that it's just something you got to go through. Like, there's no way around that. If you believe that this is the vision of where you want to go as a football department, as an athletic program, as a football department, there's not really a great time to do it. And I think, kind of going back to the decision with Mike Norvell to stay, I think there's a lot of, different factors, I think, that went into that decision. But one of them is, they needed to do all this stuff anyway. So if you were going to go hire a new head coach and bring him in, and then also be doing all of this all at the same time, now that's even more moving parts and, challenges to bring it all together, which might slow you down. Whereas if you can do this all now with Norvell and it works, fantastic. And if it doesn't work with Norvell, then at least you've got all of that in place for whenever it is down the road you feel like you need to make a change. So I just think that the idea of doing it all at one time and also spending the $60 million to do it, I just think that was not very appealing. If they didn't have to do, I think if they had decided Mike Norvell's not the answer, we just got to go find another head coach and they can figure it out, like we're just going to do things the way we've always done things, then maybe it made more sense to buy them out. But I do think that they do want to really restructure all this because they're looking at the long-term, the sport. I mean, I've been saying it for a while now, and I'm not the only one, but it's asinine and that's the only word that I keep coming up with, that people expect these football coaches to be able to run these businesses. They're not football programs anymore. They're multi-million dollar businesses with hundreds of staff members. And you expect a guy who, hey, he's got a knack for calling plays to be able to run that organization, to me, is crazy. So I'm all for it. Whether or not it works with Mike Norvell, we'll have to see.
What's going to be really fascinating about that is it's going to touch the coaching staff in one way or another, I would imagine. And I'm talking about the on-field coaching staff. I can't imagine, Ira, that they are going to run it back as we sit here tonight. We know about the whispers of, Gus may be interviewing with Arkansas, or will he be back next year? He was non-committal at his coordinator press conference last night. But I can't imagine the on-field staff is exactly the same next year. It's not identical to the one that's going to be coaching this Saturday against Florida. So when it is time for those changes to be made, is that all a Mike Norvell decision, or would that come under the purview of the new person? And if that's the case, I mean, I don't think it's a reasonable leap to make that perhaps on-field coaching decisions might be made by somebody other than Mike Norvell in the next month. That signals its own thing too. Like, you're creating potential headaches, but you're also trying to save yourself from the biggest headache, which was the check for him and him alone and Mike Norvell. But I would have to think that these changes are not just support staff and folks that, the general fan doesn't see on a game day. I think this is going to have to touch the on-the-field stuff too, right?
I would think so. I mean, I would think so. You just watch the way the team has played. They, it's not like they're terribly coached, but I wouldn't say they're wonderfully coached either. And so, I definitely think there's some opportunities to get better there. And I think that's from a big picture standpoint. That to me, again, if you read business books and, Good to Great or any of the great all-time business books, you just talk about the importance of getting the best possible people on your staff, whether it's a mom and pop shop, whether it's a big company, anybody that's watching this that has a business or works at a business, you understand what we're talking about here. And every person you have in your organization that's not as good as they could be, not bringing something valuable to the organization, it drags you down, especially if you have people who are not producing. And so you can't, no matter how much you like them, how long you've worked with them, you have to get the best producing people you can get. And I think having another voice could help in that endeavor. The one thing I would say about Mike Norvell, and the reason why I do think there's potential for it working, if this general manager type person has input into staff decisions or decision-making authority, I have no idea. I have no idea how that's going to play out. But even if that person just has input, the one thing I'd say about Norvell that we can take away from what happened at the end of last season is clearly they told him they wanted him to make changes on his staff. Clearly that was not all Mike Norvell. We heard it at the time that there was a lot of pressure on him from the administration. You've got to do something with the staff after a 2-10 season. You cannot, no matter how much you like some of these coaches and your coordinators, you cannot, it's not tenable. And he was willing to make those changes and not just make them, but I think embrace them, turning the offense over to Gus Malzahn because he thought that was what everybody believed was in the best interest of the program. He wants to do that also. So I don't think he's going to be a kicking and screaming kind of guy. There's been no indications of that. So if somebody else comes in and it is a collaborative situation, then, I think it could work. Now, on the flip side of it, I think I might have mentioned this. I can't remember if I mentioned it on the air or not, but when we were at ACC kickoff last July, and I listened to Ron Rivera, who's now the general manager at Cal, talk about his vision for being the general manager of Cal. And then I heard Justin Wilcox, the head coach at Cal, get asked about the general manager role. And he had a very different answer about what that general manager role was going to be.
Right.
And then here we are, and Justin Wilcox just got fired. And it sounds like Cal already knows who they want to hire. So that's what can happen if it's not going to work. If they're not both coming at it from the same vantage point. And so, again, well, now you look at Oklahoma and, Brent Venables was already there when they brought in their GM, Jim Nagy, who used to run the Senior Bowl. And that's right now they're kind of getting praised as that's what it needs to look like. So there's, different ways you can go about it. But I think a key is Mike Norvell going to be willing to work with whoever that person is? And can they, get on the same page? And I think from everything I've seen from Norvell, I think that there's a good chance he'll work with them.
I think one thing we agree on here for sure, whether you believe that this whole exercise has been fiscally responsible or a farce or anything in between, like this could still work. I don't know if we all assign different percentages. I'm sure I think it is a remote chance of working, but it could work. Not thrilled with it, but I think it's got a shot. But I think one of the fundamental questions we have to learn the answer to over the next month, we'll get to Ian's question here. Gus sounds like he's leaving thoughts on that. We were just speaking on that. I think one of the fundamental questions of how it's going to work is what is Mike Norvell in charge of? In terms of the football operation, in terms of the behind the scenes, like what are they asking him to do now once they roll out this plan for new personnel coming in, new blood in the building, substantial changes as they promised and Mike Norvell agreed to? That was in the first paragraph of the statement yesterday. Like, what is he going to be asked to do? Because last year the transition was, well, he's not going to be asked to design and implement and call the offense. So we wanted to pull back and take care of big picture things. All right, now here we are in a situation where they're going to need somebody else in there to at least have a loud voice in the room that can help with big picture things. Does he shift back to offense again and call plays again? What is Mike Norvell going to be in charge of, I think, is the thing that I am most fascinated by over the next month as they execute their vision. All right, what's his role? What is going to be the general manager or director of scouting or however they line this thing up? They're trailblazing one way or the other, Ira. They're going to build their own path here.
Well, I think no matter what happens, the premise that Mike Norvell is just going to be there name only and just stand around to get paid, which is the way some people are portraying it, I think is fantasy. There's no way that's going to happen. I think even if you look at NFL teams again, where head coaches don't have the oversight of the player personnel, they're still the head coach of the football team. They're still the ones on the sideline deciding, go for it, kick it, putting in trick plays, making big picture decisions about game plan, playing time, all those types of things. So at the very least, there's that. But I think it would be collaborative. And again, this is assuming that general manager position is what we think it might be. We don't even know for sure that's what it's going to be. I think that's where they end up going, assuming they can find the right person that they feel comfortable kind of having all that autonomy. But so I think it would be a big role. But to your point about as far as running the offense, people will probably throw stuff at me and maybe they won't even consider it. But if Gus Malzahn leaves and you do bring in somebody to handle a lot of the front office stuff and Mike Norvell can take that off his plate, I think he goes back to running the offense. And I've not heard that from anybody. Nobody's told me that. And I'm sure some people are throwing things at the computer right now, but I believe Mike Norvell is a good offensive coordinator. I think 2024, when you have a terrible offensive line, a terrible offensive line, and an immobile, pretty average quarterback, and no receivers, who's going to call plays that are going to work with that? What offensive coordinator is going to make something out of that recipe? So I don't blame anything for him about what 2024 looked like as an offensive coordinator. 2023, they didn't get as much out of that team as they should have, but I also think there's some stuff going on there that we can all talk about during the summer or something. I just think between the injuries to Keon and a couple other guys, Johnny was always banged up, to trying to get guys touches. I think that was a delicate roster with, Jaheim Bell and Trey Benson, all these guys that they're trying to get to me that year, unlike any other year, watching that offense did not look like Mike Norvell play calling to me. I thought Mike Norvell in 2021, 2022 was a good play caller. I think if you go back in his career, he's been a good play caller. So I personally think instead of spending $2 million on an offensive coordinator, if Gus Malzahn leaves, or $1.5 million on an offensive coordinator, and especially since you're going to be hiring a GM, I tell Mike Norvell, you're back to running out. If that's what he wants to do, I would have no problem with that. Now I understand plenty of people on the fan base won't like it, but I would definitely strongly consider it.
It can't possibly be, though, or could it, Ira? What do you think? That when it comes to the hiring of that type of a person, like we don't know the exact ins and outs. Like I understand that.
And again, real quick, just to emphasize, 2024's failures of Mike Norvell was, as in my opinion, the player personnel person,
right.
Mike Norvell, not the play caller, Mike Norvell. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to
wrap
that up.
Yeah, like one part of Mike's job screwed the other part of Mike's job. You're both his, but yeah, he didn't help himself. It can't be that they're going to leave him in charge of restructuring the football organization, though, right? Like, can we agree that, do we know that that's not part of the plan here in terms of how it all is shaped and who's in power and these significant changes that Collins promised and Mike pledged according to that statement? Like, it can't, please tell me that he's not going to be the one that they're going to ask to do this.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't have an answer for you. Sorry. I think it's I would think at the very least it'd be collaborative. I don't think they're going to sit down with him and say, this is how it is, and, just deal with it. I don't think they could, though. I mean, listen, they could. That's the thing about, you've seen coaches that, retire abruptly or resign abruptly or not resign, but are fired. I just think back to Mark Richt. Like, they wanted him to fire his son at Miami. and he wouldn't do it. So they're like, okay, we're going to fire you. We've seen other coaches. It was Brian Kelly. They wanted him to make changes, and he was like, no. So then they fired him. I mean, like that's something that happened. And it theoretically, if they did come to him and say, listen, we're doing this, this, and this, and he says, no, fire me. I don't know how they work through that. That is a question of, and again, I don't know enough about what conversations they've already had and what the vision looks like and what they've all agreed to. But I would think at the very least it'd be collaborative. I don't listen. Here's the other thing is I don't think the administration thinks that Mike Norvell is as incompetent as people seem to think he is. I mean, I think they think he's a competent coach. They think he needs help in the player personnel standpoint, which I would agree with. Man, to me, just like everybody else, we all have eyes. The biggest thing that Mike Norvell has screwed up is quarterback evaluations and overall player evaluations. I think that's the number one problem. So I think they believe if you help him with that, then he's still a guy that has a lot of qualities that you'd want as a head football coach, and they're going to tap into those. So if they thought he had brought nothing to the table and he was just going to be a wallflower for the next, they would have cut him the check. That's not how they envision it. I think he'll be a big part of at least the decision making.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's not a zero thing. Like nothing is absolute. That's not exactly what I'm envisioning here. But am I crazy to be like, hey, we're kind of in this mess because we are in this mess. We just said it. You said it. Player personnel, Mike, has put Florida State in a real bind here. He probably needs help in terms of the selection process in order to navigate out of this.
I would. Yeah. Do I think they're just saying, hey, Mike, go hire a GM and hires? Absolutely not.
Okay. All right.
No, absolutely not. I do, but I can see him being part of the process.
Yeah, fair. We do want to get to your questions here, and we see a lot of them. Please file those away. Director Nick Carlisle will put those in the chat for me to pull from as we continue.
And real quick, if they did do that, if they did say, hey, Mike, we think you need these positions, and they all come to that agreement, now you go hire them, and this is a disaster, then it's on all. I mean, that would be crazy. I can't imagine that's how it would be.
That's kind of what I was getting at. If you go there and then you're like, all right, Mike, now you go find him. Like, no, for God's sake, no.
I was just pushing back. I don't think he's going to be removed from the process.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, he'll be on the Zoom and in the room for those parts of the functions, and he should be. He's the head man. But yeah, I hope it's not one of those things like, all right, we'll give you one chance again. You can take out the keys to the car and go drive around, and we'll trust you. We do want to talk about our fine sponsor tonight, Monday Smash sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Voris. I'm happy to report, Ira, I called 904-276-9535 today because after the car wreck I was in, I needed to cover my new car. I didn't want to be driving around Tallahassee illegally and without insurance. So time was up on my old claim. I was whatever on the service I got after the accident. And so I said, I know Russ. I know what they do at State Farm. He's been awesome for me in terms of my abode here that I have at the penthouse downtown. So let's see what they can do for me for auto quotes. And I did it. I joined today. I signed up. I am now a 2-time insurance policy holder with State Farm agent Russ Voris. And I got to tell you, the service from Ian at the Orange Park location was outstanding, and it can be for you as well. And I know, Ira, even though your insurance, your plan is not necessarily with Russ, he has counseled you to take the right path, whether it was with him or not. And that's the kind of trust that you can build with Russ Voris as you reach out to him.
Yeah, our situation was we actually get health insurance through my wife, and that's what I was talking to him about at the time because we weren't sure if we were going to get health insurance through her work. And so I was going to do an independent plan, a separate plan, and he was awesome. And Russ just took so much time with me. And this was before he was a sponsor for the Smash. Just, kind of walking me through the different options, telling me what was available, what to look out for with all the different plans. And he and his staff, his staff is committed to customer service. He is committed to customer service. And again, they've got, great resources there to help you with. So if you're in Jacksonville, you can go into those stores, or like Tom, just call from over here. You go to the website and get information as well at russvorhis.com, russvorhis.com. And if you do reach out to him, let him know you heard about him on the Smash and at Warchant, because he's a huge Nole, loves helping other Noles. And, if you somehow get him on the phone, maybe you can get some of his opinions that may not be suitable for our airwaves about some of the things that have happened in the football field this season. but you can definitely feel his passion for Florida State.
And I got to tell you, if you call Orange Park, ask for Ian, because he helped me with the other policy too. So great guy, and I know that everybody that Russ hires does a great job. We'll be back in 15 seconds with your questions here on Warchant TV. This is the Monday Smash, brought to you by State Farm agent Russ Voorhees.
Contact Russ Voorhees for an auto quote today.
Luis says, we know money was probably the primary reason, maybe hope of 13-0 again. So do you think if if Clemson and Miami didn't win the ACC, do you think that allowed them not to make the decision? Thank you for being a member of the channel for 7 months, Panama Nole. Appreciate you. Do you think that rivalries and the lack of success from the other places might have allowed them to take a little extra time? Or do you think that didn't register on this decision, Ira?
Yeah, thanks, Luis. Appreciate the being a subscriber, being a member. I think, money's definitely the big reason. I mean, if the buyout wasn't there, and if Mike Norvell had gone 2-10 and 5-7, which is what it could be, or we'll see if it's 6-6. Yeah, I think there's a very good chance they would have made a change. But so I think that was the biggest thing. The Clemson, Miami being down. Yeah, I don't know. You could see it one of two ways. I mean, I remember I had a conversation with Jimbo towards the end of his tenure, and his philosophy, and I think a lot of people's philosophy was, at the time, Miami and Florida were not very good, and there was a period where Florida State was ahead of Clemson, and his feeling was that's why he was so demanding for resources. Now, we can argue about how he went about it, and how those conversations went, and what his timeline was versus what the administration's timeline was, and what they thought was possible or feasible at the time. But that was his vision was, if you've got a lead on your rivals, you need to go all in. Well, you could look at it the same way here. If Clemson and Miami are not at peak efficiency, which they're not, then maybe you need to pounce and go all in. And I will say this, I do think that I want to clarify, because I wrote something about a week or two ago, just kind of about misconceptions. And just because we ended up here with them keeping him doesn't mean that they didn't consider other options. And I do think that I'm very confident in reporting that they looked at other options. They were aware of, and I think it's been reported that they were having some conversation with Lane Kiffin's people, trying to kind of get in the mix in that situation. They were covering their bases, because this season could have gone off the rails. And if they could have gotten the right person, maybe it makes them willing to make a change. So I feel pretty confident that they were looking to see what else was available, and they just didn't see anything that was good enough to make it worth spending all that money, doing all these changes, and then hoping that this next coach is the right guy when it wasn't a sure thing. And I think there's also differing opinions. There are different people in the orbit of the people that made the decision that maybe had different feelings about whether or not there was a candidate that they could go after. So, it's not as cut and dry. I think, the perception, I know you've made this point several times, that if you didn't do it, if you're going to do this anyway, why'd you do it after Stanford? I don't believe they thought they were definitely going to do this. I think they were exploring all their options over the last month, but this is where they ended up.
Well, one place I agree with you is I think they had the money. They chose not to spend it. And it's not a question of they never had it, because that would make no sense to release that statement after Stanford. That would be, you're gambling because you think he's going to win easy games. If it didn't matter at all, that would make no sense. And if you didn't have the money, I just wonder about the wisdom of putting that statement out in the first place. If you could have ended up right back here, Ira, that's one of my major frustrations is you let Mike twist in the wind, and that robs morale from a lot of different places over there in the Moore Center, in the coaching offices, in the locker room. With the recruiting class as well, it might make retention more expensive. For what? To end right back up here? You're better off saying nothing in that moment than releasing a statement where you don't back them explicitly. They didn't say they weren't going to bring him back, but they certainly didn't say he's coming back after Stanford. And I think that's the risk they ran in that moment. And there was damage done within the building that I don't think was necessary. That would be my contention about how it was handled, my frustration about how it was handled.
And I think that I think I said at the time on the Smash that next week that my impression was that there was a lot of debate about, do we put out a statement? What kind of a statement do we put out? I think they were trying to walk a fine line of letting people know he wasn't getting fired after the Stanford game, but also letting people know this doesn't mean he's definitely coming back in 2026, because they weren't ready to make that commitment. And so I think they were kind of in limbo, which, to your point, people figure that out, and that has negative consequences. And I think that was part of the discussion. Ultimately, they decided they felt like they had to say something. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There may not have been a right answer. I'm certainly not saying it was the right answer.
First name John says, "Greetings, Tom and Ira." Don Ira, excuse me. He was addressing you with full respect. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I honestly think FSU is only a few pieces away from being great. Norvell is right; they are close. What do you think about that one, Ira? I think great. Maybe I would take issue with great, but contender for ACC championship? Hell, yeah. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, it's funny, man. Like I've gotten, and we all do this. It's a great question. I appreciate first name John, you bringing this up, and it's not 100% exactly what you're asking, but I think we'll get there. I've been pretty down on Gus, in the offense, and especially once Tommy got hurt. Those games, in the game Friday at NC State doesn't bother me nearly as much, because their throws, their plays, they're there to be made. And even the Clemson game, they just drop passes. Like, there's wide open passes that guys just drop. And if they make the plays, that's not their coordinator's fault. And in this game, if Tommy just sees it quicker, throws it earlier, those passes that got broken up, the deep balls were there. Like they're game-changing plays. And if you get up 2 scores against NC State, who knows, you may boat race them. They may not want to be there. That was an injury-depleted team that you let hang around and get confidence at home. And so, again, I don't love Gus's offense, and I've been kind of down on it. But in those last 2 road trips, I don't know if I can blame him. And it's just, coaches like to blame execution, which is blaming the players, but really it is. Now, ultimately, you could say, well, you brought in this quarterback, so it is on you, and that's fair. Tommy, he's just, whatever reason is, he does not see it quick enough or have enough arm strength, whatever it is, to get the ball where it needs to go. And then these DBs have a chance to close on the ball and make a play. So, that to me, that's one part of it. If you had a better quarterback, I think the season's probably completely different. And then, you do have these crazy circumstances. I'm not making excuses for them, because they do a lot of things poorly. But I mean, the ball hitting KJ Kirkland in the head, when we watched it live, I knew it hit him. I knew it hit him and bounced, and what happened. But then when you go watch the replay and he hears the Peter call and he's running to the sideline like there's a sniper, and he runs right into it. Not only runs it, he turns into a header, and he heads it 25 yards that way. And on top of that, I was listening to Dave Doran's press conference, and he goes, man, what a blessing that was, and he's just like, it was just such a blessing for that to happen. He goes, and not only that, he goes, but our punter is the least likely guy to want contact on our entire football team. Like, he's a punter, and he makes no bones about it. He doesn't want any part of contact, which is true, because that's why he was still back there. Like, right. He never even came upfield. He stayed back there because he doesn't want to be near contact. But he somehow makes this diving recovery that you see real athletes not being able to make. Like, receivers botch that, but he just covers it perfectly. It's just so that to me is like a microcosm of all the crap that's gone wrong for them. That, again, if they get some of those breaks, and again, I'm not saying they're a great team that's just had bad luck, but they're a pretty, I think they're a pretty decent to above average football team this season with some really bad luck. And the point somebody made to me the other day, somebody that you and I are, you know very well, he may have said the same thing to you, but I don't want to put him out there in this. Mm-hmm. He just said, look, Mike Norvell for a long time had tremendous luck here in 2022 and 2023. And he did. I mean, you think about those backup quarterbacks they faced for a while, and There's a lot of things that worked out in his favor. And now it's just like this incredible stretch of just terrible luck. And so wrapping all that up, was it John? I think that's that. I do think that they're a better team and closer than it looks, but I understand why people don't want to hear that after 2-10 last year.
Yeah, I think that they're close to being a Charlotte competitive, but that's not unfortunately, as much as I'll argue, and I do, that any given week in college football, the way the parity is now, like you could line up an ACC team with an SEC team and you won't know that result. Like you cannot definitively tell me it's going to be a blowout one way or the other. Man, the ability to get to Charlotte level, which I think they could have been this year with a little bit better health with Tommy, is not the same thing as like you can run the gamut and make a run through a playoff for 4 games or 3 games. So John, I don't think that they're close to being great, but I think they're close enough to being competitive in the ACC. You can do that in 1 year with a portal overhaul.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
The thing is, like, it's another at bat to try to do that after several at bats where you go, come on, man.
Well, no, I think that was because that was the mission this year. The mission this year wasn't to be to the standard. I'm going to, again, I'm just throwing all my stuff out.
A different definition of the standard, don't you?
Well, but my point is, people love to use the standard. Is the standard the dynasty? Because that standard's never coming back.
Okay,
it's not.
But here's part of the problem with that Stanford statement. They put the standard in that statement, and they said that we know that this is not to the standard right now. Like, so right. You set the table, not backing Mike and saying we know that this is not to the standard. They went 2-2 since that statement, and with ugly losses, the ugliest of which came before. Go ahead.
2-2 with losses at NC State and Clemson, where they almost lose every year. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
it didn't look good. I'm just saying that's reality. It's not fair to say the results don't matter. Nobody expected them coming into the year. I didn't expect them to win at Clemson, and I thought there was at best 50% a chance of winning at NC State. So
that's fair. That's fair on the preseason front, but we all know what that defense was, and we're sitting at 3. I mean, like you watch the games go by, and you're talking about as well. Like Gus had them ready to go from a schematic standpoint, and you're going, oh my God, you can't even take the easiest of layups and cash in on something. And so it leaves you feeling a certain way, which is not better than you felt after losing to Stanford. You don't feel any better after that. Yeah. So why are we citing that the standard is even in the equation after Stanford? Yeah. You don't meet it afterwards, and then you bring them back and you say, well, we understand that the standard's not being met a second time, and that he gets to come back. Like that is the point of frustration, is if they're going to cite that word and then not follow it, then that's how you feel slapped in the face as a fan, Ira. Like that's where I get really pissed off. I'm like, really? So you're going to cite the standard, then it's not going to get any better at all, and you're going to tell me that it'll get better this offseason. Like that is where it starts to the blood starts to boil a little bit.
Does it? I can't tell. I think 2 things. Number one is I don't know why they use that word. If I was them, I would not, because standard means different things to different people. And when players who are here, and because a lot of the players will use it, which they've got all the right to use it in the world. They played at Florida State, and they literally bled and sweat and cried on those fields. And I will never question them saying anything they want to say. When they talk about the standard, I think in general they're talking about the standard of when they played and when Florida State could be dominant, and just to be it's at the highest level, and that's the expectation. Even if you don't get there, that's where you're trying to get to. And I agree with that. I just feel like sometimes when people talk about the standard, that it's like they're talking about the dynasty. And I just don't think that's ever coming back. Nobody's going to be that again. And in this world with these rosters, Georgia's not what they were 2 years ago. None of these teams are. The rosters are just so fluid. You can't keep your backups. You certainly can't keep backup quarterbacks. I mean, the whole thing that, Bobby Bowden was able to have guys be redshirt juniors when they started at quarterback is because a guy had to sit there for 4 years till he got a chance to play. Well, that can't happen anymore. So I'm just saying that when that word triggers me a little bit, because I think sometimes people think of the standard as something that's unattainable.
Yeah.
Having said that, what we've seen the last 2 years isn't up to any standard. It is not up to Wake Forest standard. It's not up to Stanford standard. So I'm not defending what they're doing at all. I'm just, that word kind of just triggers me a little bit.
I agree. I think where it triggers me because they used it,
Yeah,
It triggers
that's
you
fair.
because the fans are using it, and they're like, and we both believe that there's a disconnect. They're like, don't wave that in front of me unless you're going to act on this and live up to the standard, because you leave yourself open to criticism. So you understand what the standard is, and 3-13 in 2 years, you're going to bring him back. Like, then you think
That's fair.
the money is more valuable than the standard. That's the frustrating part. We agree. Let's agree. Let's have a joint resolution here, Ira, that the standard is never to be used again. The word, strike it from the record, be it the administration or anybody.
I mean, I don't know. Can you have a standard? I don't know if you can in this world. I don't know. I mean, I know people will sit here and say Georgia does and Ohio State does. But again, I think that they're unique. They were rolling when this all came, and they've been able to, and they're incredibly funded. And so I just don't think, I just don't know how realistic it is. Now it doesn't mean you don't strive for it, and it doesn't mean you don't strive to be perfect and be as great as you could possibly be. I think you're setting yourself for disappointment if you believe that the standard is playing for national championships every year, because I just don't think that's going to be realistic. I mean, Florida State literally was number 1 or 2 or 3 in the country for 15 years. I mean, that if that's the standard, guys, I just don't see it happening again.
I think that's totally fair. I think it's also fair that, hey, if you want to run those statements by us before you release them,
there you go.
Let us know. We'd have some thoughts on that word. The first name, John. Chip Kelly for OC. What say you? I don't know, John. Thank you again for the second contribution. But he had a lot of really good players at Ohio State. I think every person that comes in now, Ira, as a coach on this staff, is going to have to be instrumental in player acquisition. As much as you can add all the things together, dollars, relationships, skills in a room, talking to a kid, a coach, or a parent. I don't know that Chip Kelly was exactly like walking into living rooms and slinging it for Ohio State. I think Ohio State was doing that, and then Kelly was using his acumen to succeed. What do you think about Chip Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with him is just, again, there's gonna be some navigation that needs to happen as you assemble a staff. Again, assuming, I thought that was a big concern I had when Gus came in, is, how are he and Mike Norvell going to get along during a game? It sounds like there was a little interaction on TV that was caught, maybe during that substitution timeout they had to call, where some people thought maybe Gus was looking at Mike a certain kind of way. That was a concern I had. When you take somebody who's been a head coach and now they go be a play caller for somebody, in Gus's case, Mike used to work for him. Mike used to go get him coffee. Mike Norvell jokes about that. He was a go get coffee guy when he was an analyst or an intern or GA, with them back in the day at Tulsa. And now you're his boss. I mean, there's some dynamics there. A guy like Chip Kelly, I think you're going to have the same thing. I mean, now you have Mike Norvell as the head coach, who's perceived to be on thin ice. You bring in a new general manager and some more staff people, and then you're going to bring in a guy like Chip Kelly, who's been a head coach and has the career he's had. I just think now you start getting into some dynamics that's where, to your point about, making these hires and figuring out how it all works, there's going to take a deft hand to make all that work, because it's not just about getting somebody who can call plays. It's about putting together a staff that works together, and you don't have somebody, it's not a Petrino situation where they take the job thinking that they're going to get your job once you get fired.
One thing we talked about earlier today was, if you're going to make replacements happen, which they are, and let's say the offensive coordinator position is something you have to replace. Like, let's just say that you had a pool of $5-6 million for those two positions together, the offensive coordinator, and the second position is the quarterback. I'm all for dumping 90% of that into the quarterback, Ira. Get me the quarterback over the coordinator. But color me very interested to see if there's one coordinator or two coordinators that need to be replaced at the end of this season and into the next month. How much do they spend, and what kind of profile does that coordinator have independent of Mike Norvell? Because that is an elephant in the room at this point. They're already redistributing his responsibilities. That's going to be something that's critical to watch from either the administration themselves or the GM that they empower to make that decision.
Yeah, I heard you guys talking about that. I think you guys had that conversation about the allocating money to the coordinator versus the quarterback. Yeah, and again, that kind of goes back to what I'm saying. If you could get in the market for a big time quarterback, and there's some out there, man. It doesn't have to be the number one guy, but there's some real quarterbacks out there that are going to be in the portal. I've some that it's already come out that they're going to be in the portal. And if it costs you whatever, we laughed at Miami when they spent $2 million on Cam Ward, and we laughed at them when they went $4 million on Carson Beck, and it hasn't worked out for them, but not because they didn't get good quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of, Mario and maybe some other, things in his program. But yeah, man, I would definitely be much more interested in investing in a quarterback. And then now you have the freedom where Mike Norvell could go back to calling plays. I think Mike Norvell could be a fine play caller with a big time quarterback. A lot of coordinators could do it with a big time quarterback. So yeah, I would put my money there. And as far as, if they have to replace both coordinators, yeah, we'll see. I think the Tony White hire was a good hire, and we'll see if he stays. I mean, I think that, he may want to stay. If he doesn't want to stay, I don't know how many things are going to be open for him. If he's not a head coach where he's going to make more money than he's making here. I mean, he gets paid really well here. So, we'll see how that all plays out. But I could see that. I would definitely put more money into a quarterback than hiring a new offensive coordinator. I'd let Mike call plays. Yeah.
If there is a defensive coordinator opening, that's the tell, right? Like that side of the ball would be the tell on where everybody's head is at in terms of the money committed to it, right. the stature of the person. And I would imagine too, that if you wanted to take this job now after 2 years ago and the 2024 season and after this season, you're going to have to pay a little extra, I would imagine, if it's a name that's established to bring them in over here. I'm very fascinated to see how they manage all of that. Douglas says, my question is, all I hear is we need to go out and get Mensa or another great quarterback. So no more fifth year for Tommy then? Opinions. I would move on, but what do you think, Ira?
Yeah, I mean, I would move on. I just think there's been too many plays that he's left out there. And I like him as a kid. I think, I was thinking about today. I was over there. We were over there for interviews today, and I saw him in the hallway. People that had been the Moore Athletic Center, FSU's football building, well, the former football building. I don't even know what you call the Moore Center anymore. It's some athletics and it's some school classrooms and meeting rooms. But at the front office, the Extra Point Club ladies volunteer, and they work up at the front desk, and they answer questions, provide information. And I saw Tommy up there. He must have been up there for. I saw him up there for 5 or 10 minutes, easy, just chatting with those ladies. And you hear so many good things about him. I think he's been I hate that his play hasn't been to what it needed to be, because I don't think people are going to leave this year with feeling good about Tommy Castellanos. But I think he's done some good things for them, and he's played hard, and he's given them a chance in some of these games that they wouldn't have with DJ Uyunglele or somebody else. So, but having said all that, I would not build an offense around him at all. And on top of that, from what I've heard from talking to different people with knowledge of compliance and these rules and these decisions, it may be tough for him to get that waiver. I think he should get it. I think it's a no doubt he should get it. It's ridiculous. The rule changed after it happened. So anybody that happened to after that, if they played in that championship game, would have been cleared. They'd be fine. I hate that he wouldn't get it, but I've heard that the NCAA they've won some court cases in the last year, and they're really starting to it's why they shut down the 5-for-5 discussion, which was a lot of people thought was going to get passed, where no more redshirting. You just get 5 years to play 5 years of college football. That was something that people thought was definitely going to happen when the NCAA was kind of reeling with eligibility. But now they've won some cases. They're trying to kind of get the genie back in the bottle a little bit about kids being in college for 6-7 years. And I think he may get hurt in that. But I hope there's a way they can do it. Maybe he goes play somewhere else. But I have a hard time seeing him back in their plans. Is at least the guy you're building around next season.
Ian, thank you very much for the contribution. Way too many ifs and buts. Hear you, man. Robs says, serious question. 5-year, 10-year outlook for Florida State football. Do they get to the Big or the SEC? Is the admin competent enough for structure changes? Well, these are two different things. Where I agree with you, Ira, is when it came to litigation, preparing themselves for that, operating at that level and making those calls. I mean, I know that a lot of people in college sports looked at them and laughed. I didn't. You didn't. Not in that. No, everybody in the fan base was in lockstep behind them saying, good, it's about time we say these things out loud in a legal setting that we've all been saying for years about equal distribution of revenue, all that kind of stuff.
Sorry to interrupt you. I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to add a little context there. the ridicule was real. I mean, we saw them get laughed at by everybody, from not just the other ACC people, but national media constantly making fun of them. You just got beat 63 to whatever, and you think you should be able to tell the ACC what you should do, and who are they to do this, and who you have the grant of rights, you're stuck. You know, I mean, they were a laughing stock for people before they went and just kicked the ACC's ass and got everything they wanted. So I just want to add that context to, and I know where you're going to go with this, but yeah, that I just wanted to add that context.
Yeah, when it comes to moving, playing chess at that level, sure. For day-to-day football ops, I don't know. Like these
Right.
next 30, 45 days are going to be really important to see if they can do that. I think that's where the jury is out here. The legal setting, though, they had their ducks in a row, man. Like, I don't know. It seems like there's still some work to be done here. These are very different problems, right? Like the nature of these issues are very different.
Right. But I do think that, and again, it depends on, first of all, I mean, a big part of it's who's making the decisions. And again, that's kind of what I wrote about in my piece today was, I'm not saying this is going to work because I don't even know who's going to make the hires. I have some thoughts on how maybe I would like to see it work, but I don't know how it's going to work. Who's going to make these decisions? Who's going to set up that framework? What role Mike Norvell has in it and all that. So we have to see how that plays out. I do think it's the right journey to go on. Whether or not they can execute it, I don't know. But I don't know that you can base the fact that they're not good right now is evidence that they can't get the right people in here who then can have the expertise to do it. And one of the things on the GM part, I was texting with a friend of mine who actually has a GM role at a college. And the next step of that is, even if you decide that's the way you want to go, do you want somebody who's a GM kind of that's doing it as a college administrator that's came up through a scouting department, came up through recruiting, knows all the ins and outs of recruiting in a college environment? Or are you going to try to go this NFL route, which is what North Carolina did with their guy, and some other schools are doing, that has had mixed results so far because those guys don't know the recruiting landscape. They don't know the relationship part of it. So even in coming to the conclusion that we need a strong general manager, even in that, like, which route do you go is going to be interesting. And so there's a lot of decisions they have to make and get right.
Maybe you need an AGM then. Also, who does the other opposite? So if you bring in the NFL guy, the assistant GM is the person who's done the college thing, or vice versa. Oh man, sounds like a lot of money. Jeremy says, Ira, respectfully. He says respectfully. How are you giving praise to an admin who got us in this horrible mess with Norvell, regardless if it made sense at the time? Well, we just kind of had that discussion a little bit, but Jeremy, thank you for the contribution.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I'm not praising really much of anything. The column I wrote today was basically just explaining my perception, what I've been able to gather of why they did what they did. And I think at the end of it, I said, the ending of my column was, they killed it in that ACC lawsuit. They got everything they could have possibly wanted. They nailed it. Peter Collins, Richard McCullough, Michael Alford, everybody around them, the general counsel. I mean, there's a lot of people that were involved with that. They killed it. They got everything they wanted. They got more money every year, up to $20 million, maybe, or even more a year from the ACC based on television ratings. They got the defined terms of what it's going to cost to get out of the ACC. That was not even existent before. There was no defined terms and what the exit fees were going to be based on, because they're concerned about, the grant of media rights and what that meant. And then there was the people that said, you can't get out of the grant of rights. It's locked solid. There's nothing you can do. That's gone away. So it was a grand slam, and that they deserved so much credit for that. It was huge. It puts Florida State in position, back to the other question about, can they get into the SEC or the Big Ten within the next 5 years? That's what puts them in position to do all that. And they deserve all the credit in the world. But to Jeremy's point, I'm not saying they're getting this right. And if they get this wrong, it's going to, for a lot of fans who didn't pay close attention to the lawsuit stuff, they are paying close attention to this. And so all of their legacies and how they're perceived and their imprint on this athletics department is going to be seen larger based on what they do with this and whether or not they get this right. And I don't know that they're going to get it right. I do understand why they're doing it. What I do praise them for is trying to go to a different model, because I think the current college model where their college head football coach is somehow supposed to know how to do all of this blank as a football coach.
Yeah.
No offense to my football coach friends out there, but very few of them need to be running Fortune 500 companies, which is kind of what this is. And so I'm all for, that's what I'm praising him for, trying to do this. I'm not telling you they're going to get it right.
Yeah. Well, you could say it. All this shit is exactly where it's like, God almighty. It smells. Randog says, has there been any rumors about Mike giving money back to FSU this year? Hopefully no strings attached like last year, and or any changes to his buyout in case we have to fire him in 26 or 27. Well, on the front end of that,
yeah, we got a question about that today.
Who asked that question?
Who asked that question? Our colleague Aslan.
Aslan asked that question. Mike with an emphatic no for a response. So I doubt you're going to, unless they have talks later down the line. That sounds like it's a no.
To clarify, Aslan asked him, like, are you donating to the Vision of Excellence or whatever that thing was called last year?
Yeah.
I mean, those things have different, I don't even know if Mike Norvell knew the name of that last year when he agreed to do it. And yeah, I mean, strings attached. Yes. I'm not that it was presented as he's giving FSU $4.5 million.
Yep.
And there were, it was not cut and dry that it was just a gift, a one-time gift. Part of the language was, hey, if you fire me in this first year, I want my $4.5 million back. This is helping you in the short term. I'm giving you some liquidity. I'm going to give you this money, but if you fire me 6 months later, I want my money back. I'm sure his agent is the one that fought to get that back in there. And then there's also some payoff things for the long term. But I don't know that Mike, I don't know that means A, that he's not restructuring his deal, or that B, he's not giving some, making some concessions. This was weeks of conversations, this process to get to this point. Is it possible they said, look, Mike, we want to take scouting back from you? And maybe they talked about, what the staff is going to look like and where they can maybe save money. I don't know. This is all just hypothetical. It wouldn't shock me if in a reorganization, he agreed to either take back some money or change some things to incentives. I haven't heard that happened. It wouldn't shock me if it did, but we don't have any evidence that it did. But just because we don't, and just because of his answer to that question today, I wouldn't take that as that it's definitely not happening. We don't have an answer.
I was tickled by that exchange. TN Longhorn says, would you all give Norvell more leeway had you rightfully gotten in the playoffs and competed in 2023? I like the guy. I hate that he's underachieving. I have a hard time, Longhorn, seeing 2024 happen if they got in the playoff in 2023. I don't know how 2-10 was hard enough with the snub. I don't think 2-10 is possible, Ira, if they get into the playoff that year because of all the benefits that would have come from it.
Yeah, no, the snub was disastrous. And then not just the snub, but then the players opting out of the bowl game. I really think that people talk about culture, and people ripped FSU for their guys opting out of the bowl game. I think that was a product of how you built the team. You had so many guys who had just been there for 1 year for this run. And then you also had a bunch of guys who came back specifically to play for the national title. Like that whole, I think back was at the battle's end, like all their graphics when they announced all those guys had committed to come back the next year. Was it run it back, or I think it was run it back, whatever the phrasing was. Yep. Because that was the vision for all those guys to come back and win a national title. When that got taken away from them for no freaking reason at all, and they're crushed, and some of them have been playing hurt for weeks, and now you want me to play hurt in a game that doesn't mean anything after college football just told me to go F myself? So now you get guys that want to sit out the bowl game because their agents are pushing them to do it too. Now you've got Mike Norvell and I think his staff who felt a little bit lost because now all their guys are leaving them. And then the team has to go out there and get clobbered. So, yeah, I think to your point, it all snowballed out of that. And it wouldn't have been as bad if that hadn't happened. But it did happen, and here we are. As far as how we evaluate them, I don't know, man. 2-10 is so bad. It's hard to you can't even. It's not like this year. This year is frustrating. But if last year had been 7-5, this year would be frustrating. It wouldn't be the same. That 2-10, I mean, it's just unconscionable. And so he's going to wear that for a long time. I don't think it's because they didn't make the playoffs the year before. That's my opinion. I don't know about you.
Yeah, you'd be better than 2-10, but there might have still been the same problems, some root problems that reared their head, and
possible, yeah.
So you have some difficulties, but yeah,
but I think it exacerbated everything. And if you go back to the time, if you go back into the moment, because I remember having this debate with Jeff and Corey on headlines, and I'm sure you guys had the conversation too. I think you guys were more and more in line of, okay, what do you do from a roster standpoint now? Because that year wasn't set up to be another run at the playoff. And do you start just building in 2024 for 2025 and 2026? Instead, you get snubbed. You get humiliated in the bowl game. Norvell gets the big contract extension. And then there's this like, oh, we've got to show everybody. And then they go all in again at all of these long shot, high priced free agents, and it was a disaster. But if you don't go that route and you get more proven guys like you got this year and at a cheaper cost and a different approach, maybe you have a much better year than you did trying to prove everybody wrong. Again, this is all hypotheticals. We can do this forever, but I think that chain of events all fed off each other.
I'll ask you as we close out tonight, make sure everybody Wake Up Warchant will be in your feeds tomorrow. It is Thanksgiving week, but we got normal stuff tomorrow. Wake Up Warchant will be in your feeds overnight. Seminole headlines coming your way at 1:00 tomorrow, right here on Warchant TV. So make sure to tune in for all that. And we've got press conferences tomorrow, right? Is it as usual where we got an assistant coach and players?
We're a little unclear on that. We're not sure if it's going to be an assistant coach. It may be an assistant coach or it might be Mike Norvell. And then we're also going to talk to Deuce Robinson, which I'm excited about because, 1,000-yard receiver, another of those guys that, again, I feel bad that this team hasn't done better because there's some guys, Deuce is certainly one of them, that has had, really an amazing season. And we don't know. This might be his only season in Tallahassee. And I hate that people aren't going to appreciate it more. But, we're going to talk to him tomorrow, so we'll have that coverage coming.
We'll save this for the way out. We all know where I stand. Do you think that we have imperfect information? We all understand this in terms of what the administration had before them and the realities. But we both believe that they had the money to do it if they wanted to do it, right? In terms of moving on from Mike Norvell?
Yeah, if there was the right coach to go get, I think they could have done it. I know they would have done it 100%. But I think those are the two biggest factors.
So watching what we've watched, and you wrote about it in your column, feeling what you felt after the game on Friday, and even letting that temper a little bit before making a decision. What do you think about it? Like where we sit right here, you agree with it? Or do you think that, maybe starting fresh, even if it is another set of zeros, might have been cleaner in terms of transitioning?
Yeah, the part that I struggle with is I don't know what the money really means. That part I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt because I don't know what spending $60 million means. I don't. I've had some people I've talked to during this process that have told me their concern was if we spend $60 million plus the whatever they have to do for the rest of the staff and maybe $70 million, maybe it's 80, whatever it is, and you go hire somebody else you're not 100% sure about because they've never done it at this level, and it doesn't go right. And so now you're sitting at 2 more years or 3 more years at least of 5-7, middle of the road, just not having good success. But now you're locked in with that person for another several years on top of trying to make all these payments on the stadium, on top of trying to come up with the money for the exit fees and everything else to get into a different conference. Their concern was if they make a change now and get the hire wrong, they're going to be in such a big hole that they're really concerned about how their ability to get out of that hole. So it's not necessarily just about coming up with the money. And that's why I think that part is important, that they didn't feel strong enough about who they could go get. So not knowing what that money really means, because I don't live in that world. I don't know what their balance sheets look like and what their assets are and how it all plays out. It's hard for me to say. As just in the normal world, I would have made a change because my biggest concern about Mike Norvell is I don't know whether or not he can if he can lead this team to where they need to get to. My concern is the way they play on the road with a lack of confidence, the way this team plays with a lack of killer instinct. Like, to me, those things are embodied by a head coach. And can he get that back? I don't know. That to me is a big concern. And that's one of the biggest reasons yes, he's poorly evaluated quarterbacks. He's not done a good job with scouting overall. There's a lot of little things that I could point to that I don't love about Mike Norvell, and I think I'll be writing that at some point here. But I don't know how important that money is. And if that money's that important, I can see why they would do this, because I do think it's more important to get everything else in place. I think that is vitally important. I don't ever want to see – I just don't want to see any college program, certainly not Florida State, continue to operate the old way when the new way is here and it's evident and it's in front of our faces. So I'm applauding that part of it. If it wasn't for the $60 million, I would definitely move on from Mike Norvell.
Yeah, to me, I wonder if that new way of doing things is going to coexist with Mike, and then the moment they can afford to move on from Mike is when they say, all right, the new way that we've built, he was just going to be here at the same time. Like, that's what's going to be fun to document here. And that's why you head over to warchant.com, everybody. We're ending it on a promo. Head over to warchant.com. $1 for your first week. The Athletic will also be a part of your sports portfolio when you join us for $1 first week at warchant.com. Documenting what comes next for Florida State is going to be unpredictable. We have no idea how they're going about it. We hope they do, and we'll see what order they go in terms of announcements, hirings, firings, replacements. Are people going to leave of their own accord? This is all what's coming in the next month, in addition to 2 Wednesdays from now, the early signing period, where Florida State feels pretty good. It sounds like, talking to our Matt Lacerda, Michael Langston, about the guys that are currently committed to them. We've got articles to that end available on warchant.com. The guys that are committed to them currently signing, actually, when we get to signing day. So a lot is going on right now. We have no idea how they're going to do it, but we're going to report on how they do it and then discuss how they do it. Head over to Warchant for just $1. We also want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, because for the Smash, we won't be back till after the holiday. How about one more thing? Ira, do we have one tonight?
Can I get one more thing? Can I get one more? Oh, and real quick, by the way, I think we're going to have a new business partner affiliated with the Smash, possibly in the near future. So hopefully that's going to come together here soon, and we'll be able to introduce you guys to them. Awesome people, and we're really excited to have them on board on the Smash. But tomorrow night, men's basketball, Luke Laux, this Florida State men's basketball team back in action tomorrow evening. We'll be covering that at the Tucker Center. It's just a game. It's going to be another record. I just have to assume if they're playing a game, they're going to set another offensive record. Last time it was LeJay Jones with 10 3-pointers made, tied a record with George McLeod. They've already broken their own record for 3-pointers attempted in a game. It's a whole
it was an ACC record as well.
ACC record.
Yeah,
correct. Yeah, so it's a whole new era there. If you're in town Tuesday, if you don't have to go to work on Wednesday, go on over to the Tucker Center, watch Luke Laux and the men's basketball team. We'll have plenty of coverage at warchant.com as well. Also, lots of recruiting stuff going on. Might be some recruiting news coming from the guys here in terms of commitments. There's some positive stuff coming out of the Norvell news again. So stay connected to warchant.com.
KG Noles gets us in under the buzzer. Thank you very much, KG Noles. I'm certainly not trying to defend Mike, but Ira explaining the GM dynamics has me realizing that it's kind of confusing to know how to react, because I have no clue who handles what between the GM or head coach in college football. Exactly. Thank you, KG. We appreciate that contribution. What is Mike Norvell going to be in charge of? What is the general manager going to be in charge of? Who has the deciding vote if they're not on the same page? We're going to find out over the next month.
And just real quick, reiterating what we said earlier, just because I'm not sure if he was in for the whole show, there's different models. There's models where the GM is totally works for the head coach. There's models where the GM is more like the NFL model, where they kind of run the program, like Andrew Luck at Stanford. He's running that program. So there's different ways to go about it. I think they're going to have a really strong GM. At the very least, I think it'll be collaborative with the head coach. It may be above the head coach. We'll have to see how it plays out. But yeah, there's different paths that they can take. So we're all a little bit confused right now.
We hope you have a safe holiday weekend, or week, I should say, if you're traveling. I know there's a lot of travel around Thanksgiving. So if you're on the roadways, you're heading to the airports, hope everything goes smoothly as possible for y'all. Stay safe out there. And for Director Nick Carlisle behind the scenes, I can say that better, Nick Carlisle behind the scenes, there we go. For State Farm agent Russ Voorhis for sponsoring the program. For Irish O'Fell, I'm Tom Lang. Stay tuned. Warchant TV going to have a lot more for you tomorrow, and a lot of vibrant conversations to come on the message boards and right here on Warchant TV. Good night, everybody.